So, Trey Miguel has spoken about his decision to return to Impact Wrestling and turn down offers from the likes of WWE and potentially AEW too. So, this has been something that's been really interesting, hasn't it, since Trey Miguel made his shock return to Impact a couple of weeks ago. Now, as we mentioned and as we've covered extensively here on the channel, former Rascalz member Trey Miguel made his surprise return to Impact Wrestling a couple of weeks ago, showing up as the mystery partner in an 8-man tag team match main event on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Now, recently, Trey Miguel made a recent appearance on Wild On, which is the podcast of Taylor Wilde, and Trey Miguel explained why he didn't join his former Rascalz stablemates Wes Lee, formerly known of course as Dezmond Xavier, and Nash Carter, formerly known as Zachary Wentz, in jumping from Impact Wrestling to WWE NXT once their contracts expired last November. Now, Lee and Carter debuted under the new tag team name of MSK on NXT last month. This is what Trey Miguel had to say. He said, quote, "Zach's married and Dez is engaged now, and they just need wrestling in a different way than I do right now, if that makes sense. They need it to do different things for them than I do. And I also think that I don't mean to sound like I'm speaking bad about Impact, but I feel like they ran out of things to do with the Rascalz. You know what I mean?" Now, Miguel continued on and cited family-related reasons as the main reason why he didn't want to relocate to Orlando, Florida, where, of course, the WWE Performance Center is based. He said, quote, "My oldest brother just had my most recent nephew, and he was born premature because his mother fell ill. So they actually induced her, and he's home now, but he was in isolated care for 2 months, and they named him after my late brother. And it's just like, I couldn't imagine moving to effing Orlando, Florida, a month after this little miracle, you know what I mean? That's not it for me. It's not like if I don't go to Orlando, I don't get to wrestle anymore. I still get to wrestle more than anyone at NXT. I train whenever I want." Miguel said Impact Wrestling also allows him to maintain a better work-life balance than other companies would at this current period of time. He said, quote, "Impact affords me the luxury of being able to stay home, which is super duper important to me because we have a wrestling school here and I'm one of the head trainers. I have a lot of family here and wrestling has my heart more than anything in the world, but I've just been through so much personally that I can't pull myself from my family right now. I just really can't. I can't do that. And especially, I have a brother that passed away in 2013, and it's life." Now, Miguel, as I mentioned, originally left the company, Impact Wrestling, back in November alongside his Rascalz partners, and it was expected that all 3 stars would jump to WWE. There were various reports coming out at the time, of course, that Trey Miguel, Dezmond Xavier, and Zachary Wentz essentially had an open invitation and an open contract to sign with WWE whenever they wished, and that's what we saw 2/3 of the Rascalz do, but Trey Miguel recently returned to Impact Wrestling. So there is a lot to break down there, I think. And from what he is basically saying there, it's kind of what we've spoken about here on the channel, that just because WWE, I suppose, is interested doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision. At the end of the day, sometimes when you're watching performers on television, when you're watching pro wrestling on television and you see the characters they are, the larger-in-life personalities and people they are, you forget sometimes that they're real people too, and there's a person behind the character. They're just characters on a TV show, and they all have real lives, they all have real issues and problems and personal lives that maybe are bigger, and they should be bigger than pro wrestling and the requirements of pro wrestling. From what Trey Miguel is saying here, it's not necessarily a case of I had reservations about creative, or I had reservations about am I going to get my push in NXT or anything like that. It was more of a case of right now it's just not the right time, and he's got other things that are going on right now, and ultimately life comes first, right? Life comes first in life, family, your close ones, your loved ones, especially over the course of the past 12 months of everything that everyone's been through. But especially what he's explaining there, what he's been through with, you know, his brother passing away in 2013 and his nephew being born premature and having to help them out, and also having his training school nearby, all of that, you know. I've mentioned this before, for most people, WWE is the be-all and end-all. When you get into pro wrestling, the aim is to go to WWE, because for most people, especially people of my current generation, which I think Trey Miguel is a part of, the end game and the end goal there is to eventually go to WWE, right? You want to have that WrestleMania moment, you want to compete at a WrestleMania, you want to compete in a Royal Rumble, you want to do these things on Raw and SmackDown, because that's all that you've really known if you've grown up watching wrestling over the course of the last 20 or 30 years or so. So for most people, the aim and the end goal is to go to WWE, but not for everyone. Not for everyone. Some people, they just fall in love with pro wrestling. They maybe like WWE, they maybe grew up watching WWE, but maybe they prefer other stuff. Maybe their dream and goal is to go to Japan. Maybe their dream and goal is just to be a pro wrestler itself. And if you look at Trey Miguel, I think he's more complex than most people, in the sense that the trajectory is to get into pro wrestling, go to WWE, and it goes like that. It goes like that. I don't think that's the case for Trey Miguel. Now, right now, when it comes to his contract and his situation with Impact Wrestling, do we know? Do we understand all of the elements of it? Right now, we don't. We don't know if Trey Miguel has re-signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling. We don't know if he's going to be sticking around for a year or 2 years or 2 weeks. We don't know. What we do know at the moment is that he's going to be at No Surrender, and we do know that, of course, he was at the most recent TV tapings because he's been appearing recently on Impact Wrestling television. That's what we know right now. Given what he's saying there, given his comments about Impact Wrestling just is a better fit for him right now, given the fact that, like he said, he's got a better work-life balance because of it, given the fact that he's continuing to wrestle more often than NXT, which is a good point. I don't know if it's necessarily factually accurate. I think if you're in NXT, you're in the Performance Center pretty much 5 days a week at this point. Regardless of the pandemic, they've started up classes once again in the Performance Center. That's a whole separate issue, by the way, because some of the stuff that's going on at the Performance Center is slightly alarming, I think, when it comes to the pandemic. As far as what I've heard and what I've seen online, the cases with the Performance Center right now is it's back to having classes 5 days a week. You're being trained. You're being paid to train to become a pro wrestler, which, what about? That's the ultimate dream, really, isn't it? But forget WWE, just being paid to become a pro wrestler. Are you kidding me? But they're doing the classes 5 days a week there, and they're only getting tested 2 days out of that week. And obviously, you've got a Performance Center full of people coming from all different backgrounds, coming from all different political views, coming from all different views on the pandemic, and all different perspectives on how seriously they do or don't take it. As I mentioned, they're only tested 2 times out of those 5 days. Obviously, that's more than most people around the world and in the United States, but in the grand scheme of things, that's why they're having quite a few outbreaks there. And I think that also factors into Trey Miguel's decision right now. As he mentioned, wants to be closer to his family. He needs to be closer to his family. Does he really want to be going into a Performance Center every single day, where potentially it is a risk, especially if he is trying to help out with premature, loved ones at home? That's just, it's a risk not worth taking. Pro wrestling isn't worth that risk. And maybe he is accurate in the sense that because of the Impact Wrestling schedule of wrestling 4 or 5 days out of the month, and then in his training school, maybe wrestling pretty much every single day, maybe he is wrestling more often than the people in NXT, and maybe that has scratched that itch, as it were, when it comes to pro wrestling. So I think his rationale and reasoning, I think is admirable, and I think it's justified. I think during this time that we're in, like right now, given this current climate, there isn't any need, I think, to rush into things. Yes, right now maybe money is tighter than it would have been a year or so ago, and obviously there isn't an independent scene really right now. There are select indie dates that are popping up here and there, and select indie promotions that are doing things here and there, but it's not the thriving indie scene that was around 12 and 18 months ago, where someone like Trey Miguel would be booked 5, 6, 7 days a week on every single indie show, and he'd be making good money doing it. That's not the case right now. So yes, times are tough, and maybe money is tight, but just because that's the case, you shouldn't be making rash decisions. And I credit Trey Miguel, I really do, because I think he's done what not a lot of pro wrestlers probably would do in his situation, in that they would just go, you know what, maybe I'm not going to get the opportunity to go to WWE ever again. Maybe I'm not going to get the opportunity to sign with WWE ever again. Maybe this is my moment. I've got to take it regardless of what's going on. And I think Trey Miguel's got a good head on his shoulders, and I think he's gone, look, it's not the right time. It's not the right fit right now. Will it come up again in the future? I don't know. If I'm good enough, talent will rise to the top. Now, obviously, there's a bit of discussion about heat right now with Trey Miguel and WWE, specifically Triple H, because, look, WWE wanted all 3 members of the Rascalz. They didn't just want 2 of them. Now, that's no disrespect to Dez and Wentz or anything like that. They're tremendous athletes, but you know for a fact when WWE was looking at signing these stars, they were going, we want the Rascalz as a whole package because they're better together than apart. But as I mentioned, Trey Miguel, it wasn't right for him. And then Triple H came out on the NXT Takeover post show call. I think it was in September. When would that have been? It would have been later last year. Whenever it was, Triple H was on one of his those post Takeover media calls, and obviously he was asked the question about Dez and Wentz because they just signed with WWE and that was announced on social media. But Trey Miguel, of course, wasn't part of that group, and he was asked. And Triple H went on this diatribe about, if you're going to come here, you have to be 100% committed. You can't be a half in, half out. We only want people that are committed to succeed, and we only want people that are committed to becoming stars and committed to becoming this and that. And it kind of implied that Trey Miguel's, I don't know, he didn't want it. He didn't want it, and we only want people. It was almost like we turned him down because he didn't want it. And it's like, in reality, no. Trey Miguel, WWE desperately wanted Trey Miguel. He said no because it's not the right time or right fit. And frankly, I just felt like Triple H's comments came off a little bit condescending. Oh, why would we want him? He doesn't want to come here. That kind of stuff. It's like, come on, you were desperate to sign Trey Miguel. It's no big deal. They turned you down, okay? It's like the spurned guy at the prom kind of situation. So because of those comments, Trey Miguel, that drew the ire of Trey Miguel. He wasn't really happy with what was said by Triple H, and I think rightfully so. Trey Miguel was attempted there to be painted in a certain light, like he wasn't committed or he didn't love pro wrestling or anything like that. And Trey Miguel came out once again, like he did in this interview, and said, no, I had a premature nephew, I had family commitments, and I have to look after my family right now. I need to be close to home. I'm not going to move to Florida in the middle of a pandemic. I'm not going to relocate. Maybe in a year's time, who knows? But right now, it's not the right time. And I think that's right. I think that's the right call. I really do think that's the right call. And, if you want to look at it, all that sort of stuff as well, that's way more important than what I'm going to say next, because then obviously you can move on to creative stuff in terms of the career of Trey Miguel and all that kind of stuff, but the personal stuff, it's far more important. So I respect Trey Miguel massively for making that decision. Again, he might end up with NXT in a year's time or something, because if he does in a year's time, it would be a better fit for him right then. That's the difference. It's not the right time. It's just not the right time to do it right now. When it comes to the creative, I think personally, staying with Impact for another year really isn't a bad thing whatsoever. Because if Trey Miguel has a very successful 12 months or whatever with Impact Wrestling, he'll be far more in demand than he was at the end of last year. Because Trey Miguel, realistically, what has he won in Impact? Not a lot. Has he been a world champion? No. He was getting there around Slammiversary time last year. He was in the main event. Didn't get to the final two or anything like that, but he was starting to flirt with maybe getting in that main event picture. That's a possibility. If he sticks around for 12 more months with Impact Wrestling, Trey Miguel does have the potential to get in the main event. Trey Miguel does have the potential to be a world champion in Impact Wrestling. Obviously, he's got a great look. Obviously, he's incredible high flyer in the ring, can do some amazing things. The power slide moves are unbelievable. And also, as well, he's got a great personality. He really does. People kind of imply that maybe his promos aren't that strong, or he's sort of like the modern wrestler, flies around in the ring, but no psychology or no promos. I mean, maybe the psychology stuff, maybe that could be leaned on a little bit there. Maybe that's justified, but the promos criticism, I really don't see that. I mean, if you look at the Treehouse segments that he did with the Rascalz and Impact Wrestling, it proves that he is a good promo. And look, if Impact Wrestling can convince Trey Miguel to commit, even if it's for another 12 months, that's a big signing. That's a big signing for Impact Wrestling. You have to look at the guys that have left recently, whether it's Ethan Page or Taya Valkyrie or potentially some others in the very near future. They need to keep people like Trey Miguel, because Trey Miguel is a big star. Trey Miguel can be a big star. He is someone that can have a lot of potential, and someone that can, as I mentioned, be a world champion in the space of the last sort of the next 6 months or something like that. So it would be a big deal if they can convince him to stay for longer. Will he stay? I don't know. Maybe it'll be a situation where AEW might offer him a deal where he doesn't have to relocate to Florida. Obviously, that's where they tape there, but maybe it might be a case where AEW offer him a better offer. He hasn't really spoken that much about AEW. That is a possibility, but I think he wants to be somewhere where he's comfortable and where he knows his surroundings and he knows everyone in their certain place right now. I just don't think, given his circumstances, he wants to take that much of a risk right now. And again, that's not a bad thing. That really isn't a bad thing whatsoever. So it looks like we're probably going to see a bit more Trey Miguel for the time being in Impact Wrestling. Whether it's going to be super long term or not, we don't know. But he certainly has his reasons for staying, and I think they're admirable. I really do think so. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Trey Miguel explaining his decision to not sign with WWE and return to Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, New Japan, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.